Have you ever felt like you were living, but not really present? You wake up, get things done, check off your to-do list, but deep down, something feels off, like you're moving through life on autopilot. Maybe you've achieved the things you thought would bring you happiness, a stable job, a good income, a bit of recognition. And yet there's still this quiet voice inside asking, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? I've been there too. And the truth is, I didn't need a new job or a bigger goal. What I needed was to pause long enough to hear myself again. That's when I came across the teachings of a Shaolin master, Shi Hung Yi. And what I learned from him wasn't just about ancient wisdom or martial arts. It was about how to return to myself. These lessons helped me realign my focus, rebuild my habits, and rediscover my purpose. And today, I want to share those 6 life-changing insights with you. Not as motivational fluff, but as real tools you can apply to your everyday life. Mastering your attention. The first step to self-mastery. Have you ever woken up feeling like your mind is already spinning? Emails, messages, a flood of notifications before you've even gotten out of bed? That strange, weightless feeling that the day is slipping through your fingers, even though it just started. It's not because you're lazy or undisciplined. It's because your attention is being pulled in 100 directions, and none of them are chosen by you. In today's world where everything competes for your focus, learning to master your attention is not optional. It's essential. In fact, it's the first and most important step toward mastering your life. Shaolin master Shi Hung Yi once said, "If you don't control your focus, your mind will remain distracted by countless external stimuli." His words cut through the noise of modern life. We often think that self-mastery begins with motivation, willpower, or strict discipline. But Shi Hung Yi challenges us to look inward first. Before you can truly change your life, you must first learn where your energy is going and take ownership of your focus. That idea stayed with me, but I didn't fully understand it until I hit a wall in my own life. 2 years ago, I was running on empty. My calendar was full, my phone never stopped buzzing, and yet I felt like I was achieving nothing that actually mattered. I was constantly busy, but completely unfulfilled. One Saturday morning, exhausted and emotionally fried, I turned off all my devices and committed to 48 hours without screens. I picked up a notebook and started writing whatever came to mind. What I discovered shocked me. My thoughts were scattered, reactive, and driven by things I didn't even care about. In just 2 days of silence, I realized I hadn't been living my life. I'd been letting the world program my focus. From that moment on, I made one small change that made a big difference. Each morning, before touching my phone, I ask myself a simple question. Where do I want to direct my attention today? Not what others want, not what the world demands, but me, my values, my purpose, my priorities. That one habit became my anchor in a chaotic world. Mastering your attention doesn't require a retreat to a monastery. It starts with awareness, with choosing silence over noise, with reclaiming the mental space that's been quietly rented out to apps, algorithms, and obligations. Your attention isn't just a resource, it's the fuel for your future. So tomorrow morning, before the world floods in, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what deserves my focus today? Because the moment you take back your attention, you begin the journey of taking back your life. Discipline beyond feelings. How to win when you don't feel like it. Have you ever stared at your to-do list and felt utterly paralyzed? Not because you lacked time, but because you just didn't feel like doing anything? Maybe you were tired, frustrated, or simply unmotivated. It's a trap many of us fall into, waiting until we feel ready to take action. But here's a truth I've learned through experience. If you let your feelings drive your decisions, you'll always be at the mercy of your lowest moments. Shaolin master Shi Hung Yi once said, "Discipline is doing what needs to be done, regardless of mood or external circumstances." That quote hit me hard when I first heard it, because for most of my life, I thought discipline meant pushing yourself hard only when you're in the zone, when motivation hits or the timing feels perfect. But the real meaning goes deeper. Discipline isn't about pushing through with brute force. It's about consistency with purpose, even when your emotions try to pull you off course. A few years ago, I set a goal to build a daily writing habit. It started off great. I had ideas, momentum, and enthusiasm. But then the honeymoon phase faded. Life got busy. I had long days at work. Some mornings I didn't even want to look at a blank screen. One night after working late, I almost convinced myself to skip writing. "You deserve a break," my brain whispered. But then I remembered something else Yi teaches, that true mastery includes honesty and self-awareness. Was I really too tired, or was I avoiding the discomfort of doing something hard? I sat down and wrote a single sentence, just one, but that one sentence turned into a paragraph. That paragraph turned into a full page. And I realized something powerful. Discipline isn't a giant leap. It's a quiet refusal to quit. Let me tell you about Mia, a friend who struggled with depression and couldn't get out of bed most mornings. After months of therapy, she created one rule: make her bed the moment she woke up. Some days it was all she could manage, but that one small act became her symbol of control, proof that her feelings didn't own her. Today, she runs her own small business and speaks openly about how that one discipline helped rebuild her life from the ground up. You see, discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's about building trust with yourself. When you follow through on your actions, even when it's uncomfortable, you send yourself a message: I can count on me. So the next time you're tempted to skip something because you don't feel like it, pause and ask, what would the disciplined version of me do right now? Then do it, imperfectly, slowly, but surely. Because your future isn't built in bursts of inspiration. It's built in the quiet, gritty moments when you act anyway. Finding harmony through balance, the missing skill in modern life. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right and still feel like something is off? You wake up, hit your checklist, stay productive. But inside, there's this persistent unease, like your life is somehow out of tune, but you can't put your finger on what's wrong. That feeling isn't failure. It's imbalance. And the root of that imbalance, more often than not, comes from a simple yet powerful gap: the space between your expectations and your reality. According to Yi, a third-generation Shaolin master, you can only harmonize something when you understand the elements that need balancing. It starts with observation. What feels out of alignment in your life? That insight is more than ancient wisdom. It's an urgent skill for modern living. We're constantly told to set goals, chase dreams, hustle. But what we're rarely taught is how to pause and observe where we are versus where we think we should be. And it's that tension, the silent clash between what we hoped for and what actually is, that creates stress, frustration, and disconnection. I learned this lesson firsthand during a period in my life when, on paper, everything looked amazing. I had just been promoted, my income had doubled, and I was receiving recognition I had always wanted. Yet I was constantly exhausted, short-tempered, and deeply anxious. It didn't make sense until I finally slowed down long enough to notice I was living by an outdated expectation. I thought success would equal happiness. I believed that achieving more would automatically bring me peace. But what I hadn't adjusted for was the toll that came with it. The longer hours, the lack of personal space, the shift in my values. I was chasing a version of life that no longer fit. That realization changed everything. I started carving out white space in my schedule, protected time with no agenda. I reduced my work hours slightly, took up journaling again, and redefined what winning meant to me. Instead of success being measured by how much I did, I began to measure it by how aligned I felt. That single shift, matching my reality to new, healthier expectations, brought balance back into my life. I'm reminded of my friend Maya, a new mom and full-time marketing executive, who was constantly overwhelmed trying to be a perfect parent and a perfect professional. One night, in tears, she told me she felt like she was failing at both. We talked it through, and what she discovered was that her expectations hadn't adapted to her new season of life. Once she gave herself permission to ask for help, set realistic work goals, and define success by presence rather than perfection, everything changed. She didn't do more, she aligned better. So here's the truth. You don't need to control every part of your life to find peace. You need to become aware of where you're misaligned and gently bring yourself back into balance. Ask yourself honestly, what expectation is driving me right now? And is it helping or harming me? Because real harmony doesn't come from having it all, It comes from being at peace with what you have and who you are in this moment. Martial arts as a mirror. How movement leads to inner mastery. We often think of martial arts as combat, fighting forms, physical power, and discipline through repetition. But what if I told you martial arts aren't about fighting others at all, but about facing yourself? What if the greatest battles take place not in the ring, but in your own mind? That's what I discovered when I began studying the deeper meaning behind Eastern martial traditions. Shaolin master Shi Hongyi once said, "Through martial arts like Kung Fu and Qigong, you push your limits and quiet the noise of daily life. These practices bring your body and mind into alignment, allowing you to access deeper layers of yourself." That statement reveals a truth few people understand. Martial arts, when practiced intentionally, are a path, not to aggression, but to self-awareness. It's not just about mastering technique, it's about mastering your reaction, your ego, and ultimately, your attention. In a world dominated by overstimulation, martial arts offer a rare space where focus becomes survival and silence becomes strength. I'll never forget the first time I stepped into a dojo. I wasn't looking for enlightenment, I was looking for stress relief. My life felt chaotic, unstructured, and mentally loud. At first, the movements felt foreign. I kept messing up. My balance was off. I was frustrated. But something strange happened. With each class, I began noticing not just physical patterns, but emotional ones. When I felt off balance in class, it mirrored how I was off balance in life. When I tensed up before striking, it reminded me of how I tensed up when facing conflict at work. Training became a mirror, showing me where I lacked control, where I lacked awareness. I wasn't just learning forms, I was learning about myself, and that shift was transformative. Take Michael, for example, a tech engineer in his 40s who started practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu after suffering burnout. He told me he thought he was just learning self-defense, but on the mat, he discovered how quickly his mind spiraled under pressure. At first, he'd panic, overthink, freeze, but over time, BJJ taught him to breathe, to be present, to make decisions without fear. Those lessons didn't just make him a better martial artist, they made him a calmer leader and a more connected father. Or consider Erin, a high school student struggling with anxiety who began practicing Tai Chi. At first, she couldn't even stand still without feeling overwhelmed. But after weeks of practice, she told me she could finally sit in silence for 5 minutes without panic. "It's like my body finally learned how to listen to my mind," she said, "and my mind finally stopped yelling back." You don't need to train at a temple or become a black belt to discover yourself through movement. Whether it's Kung Fu, Tai Chi, boxing, or even yoga, any practice that brings body and mind together can reveal who you are beneath the surface. Because when you learn to move with awareness, you start to live with intention. And that's the greatest fight of all, not against others, but against your own limitations. Master that, and you begin to master your life. Tools for balance and inner peace, creating stillness in a world that never stops. What if the key to feeling less overwhelmed isn't in doing more, but in learning how to pause? In a world that constantly demands our attention, movement, and reaction, stillness has become a forgotten art. But true peace, the kind that steadies your breathing and clears your mind, doesn't happen by accident. It's a skill. In his teachings, Shaolin master Shi Hongyi shares a simple but profound message. Peace is not something you find out there. It's built layer by layer through intentional practices. He suggests that achieving balance starts with small steps. Stepping away from distractions, practicing awareness, reconnecting with your body, and realigning your expectations. And while that wisdom may sound ancient, it's never been more relevant than right now. Today, balance isn't just a spiritual ideal, it's a survival skill. I learned that the hard way during a time when I was constantly anxious, checking my phone over 100 times a day, and convinced I was just too busy to slow down. That cycle of overcommitment wore me down until one Sunday afternoon, I found myself crying in the grocery store parking lot, over forgetting to buy coffee. That's when I knew something deeper was off. I didn't need a vacation. I needed peace, real, lasting peace. I started by doing something I'd never done before. I shut everything off for 24 hours. No phone, no laptop, no TV. At first, it felt like I was going through withdrawal, but by the second hour, something softened. I heard myself think clearly. I journaled about my stress instead of numbing it. I noticed how shallow my breathing had become and how tense my body was, even at rest. That day, I stumbled into what Master Shi Yi describes as retreating from distraction. It was just the first step, but it opened a door. From there, I began experimenting with small daily rituals, 5 minutes of meditation, stretching each morning before emails, even asking myself at night, what did I give my energy to today? Over time, those moments added up to a quiet confidence. I wasn't just reacting to life anymore. I was living with intention. I've seen others transform with these tools too. My friend Luis, a former financial advisor, now begins every day with Qigong and says it's helped him manage anxiety better than any app or pill. And Sophie, a college student who used to struggle with racing thoughts, found her calm through journaling and breathwork. It's not about fixing everything, she told me. It's about finally being present for something. That's the real lesson. Peace doesn't come from escaping the world. It comes from creating tiny pockets of stillness within it. Places where your mind can land, your body can breathe, and your spirit can catch up. So ask yourself, what simple practice could I begin today to create more inner peace? Because once you reclaim even a small part of your attention, you begin building a life that no longer needs escaping. Living with purpose, the quiet power of knowing who you are. What if the real reason you feel stuck isn't because you're unmotivated, but because you haven't yet defined your why? In a world obsessed with doing more, climbing faster, and constantly upgrading, we rarely stop to ask one of life's most important questions. What is all of this for? We measure our worth by titles, likes, or output, but too often, we're sprinting toward goals that aren't even ours. Shaolin Master Shi Yi offers a much quieter, yet more profound view. He says, a good life is one lived in completeness, knowing who you are and finding stability in your circumstances. From there, make something good out of your place in the world. His words point to a truth we often overlook. Purpose isn't something you chase, it's something you cultivate, and it begins by understanding who you are, not who you think you're supposed to be. I learned this lesson in a season when everything around me looked impressive, but everything inside me felt empty. I had just reached a big career milestone, promotions, recognition, more money than I'd ever earned. But instead of feeling fulfilled, I felt disconnected, like I was performing a version of myself to please the world. One night after an exhausting networking event, I came home, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize the person staring back. That moment sparked a deep reevaluation. I unplugged for a weekend, left the city, and spent 2 days in nature with nothing but a journal. I asked myself hard questions. What do I believe in? What gives me energy? What would I do if no one else were watching? Slowly, the noise faded and clarity returned. I realized my deepest joy came not from achievement, but from helping others grow. I didn't need to quit everything. I just needed to realign my work with that deeper truth. I adjusted my schedule, shifted my goals, and built time into my week for mentorship and creativity. The more I honored what mattered to me, not just what looked good, the more purposeful I felt. I've seen this same shift in others too. My cousin David was a successful marketing exec who, for years, felt trapped in the corporate machine. After a health scare and months of soul-searching, he left to start a small community garden nonprofit. Today, he earns less, but lives more. For the first time, he told me, I feel like I'm actually building something that reflects me. That's what purpose is. Not a grand revelation, but a daily decision to live in alignment. You don't need a life-changing event to begin. You just need a willingness to stop running long enough to ask yourself, what actually matters to me? Because when you know who you are, you stop needing permission to live meaningfully. You stop chasing noise and start creating something real. And that's when life becomes not just productive, but purposeful. So now you've heard the 6 lessons, from mastering your attention to building discipline beyond feelings, from restoring balance to finding peace, rediscovering your body through movement, and finally, reconnecting with your purpose. The question is no longer, which lesson speaks to you? The real question is, which one are you ready to live? You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You don't need a monastery or a silent retreat. All you need is a single decision to take one of these ideas, even just one, and make it a daily practice. Maybe that means taking 5 minutes tomorrow morning to sit in silence before your phone, or saying no to something that no longer aligns with who you are, or simply breathing with intention for the first time in weeks. Whatever it is, start small. Start now. Because the journey to self-mastery doesn't begin with a dramatic leap. It begins with a quiet return to yourself. And if you ever forget where to begin, remember this: you already have everything you need. You just need to choose it. Thank you for walking through these lessons with me. I hope they meet you where you are and guide you closer to who you're becoming. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and above all, stay true.